There is a plant that has saved more lives than any pharmaceutical invention of the last 50 years. In 1967, soldiers were dying faster from disease than from bullets. Malaria was killing 30 million people annually. Every drug had failed. Resistance was spreading globally. Armies were powerless against a microscopic parasite. The Chinese government did not look to modern laboratories for answers. They looked backward into forbidden medical archives from 340 AD. What they found was a molecular weapon hidden inside a common garden plant, a plant that detonates cancer cells, obliterates parasites, and cures fever in hours. The discovery worked so well that it embarrassed modern medicine. So well that it was quietly reframed, regulated, and locked behind laboratory doors for 16 centuries. And one small instruction in those ancient texts explains why modern science almost destroyed the cure, not by rejecting tradition, but by improving it. Welcome to Lost Archives. The archive opens in 340 AD during the Eastern Jin dynasty in China. A scholar named Ge Hong compiles an emergency medical handbook. He calls it Zhou Ho Bei Ji Fang, emergency prescriptions kept up one's sleeve. Inside, he documents hundreds of remedies, but one stands out. For intermittent fevers, what we now call malaria, he prescribes a specific plant. One instruction stands out, not because it explains anything, but because it refuses to. Take a handful of Qing Hao, soak it in water, wring out the juice, drink it all. But here is what makes the prescription remarkable. He gives a warning without explanation. Do not boil it. For 16 centuries, that detail seemed insignificant. It would take a global crisis for anyone to realize what boiling had been erasing. By 1596, Li Shizhen includes Qing Hao in his compendium of Materia Medica, recommending tea made from it specifically for malaria. The plant becomes foundational in traditional Chinese medicine, used not just for fever, but for expelling intestinal parasites. They call it sweet wormwood. Fast forward to 1967. The Vietnam War is destroying armies with disease. Malaria is killing thousands of soldiers. In China alone, 30 million cases occur every year, with 300,000 deaths. Chloroquine, quinine, one by one, every trusted drug stops working. Not gradually, completely. Each failure teaches the parasite how to survive the next attack. On May 23, 1967, the Chinese government launches a secret military operation called Project 523. The mission is simple to state and impossible to fail. Find a cure or watch entire units collapse without ever firing a shot. They screen over 240,000 compounds. Nothing works. In January 1969, they recruit Tu Yu, a pharmaceutical chemist at the China Academy of Traditional Chinese Medicine. She's sent backward through history while everyone else searches forward. If the answer isn't in the past, there may be no answer at all. She and her team screen over 2,000 traditional recipes, testing 380 herbal extracts from 200 different plants. Most fail completely, but one plant keeps appearing in the old texts. Artemisia annua, sweet wormwood. The initial experiments are frustrating. They boil the wormwood according to conventional scientific methods. The experiments behave like a lie, working just enough to give hope, then failing without warning. Then she remembers Ge Hong's instructions from 340 AD. The breakthrough comes from a sentence written 16 centuries earlier and a mistake modern science assumed couldn't exist. She realizes that boiling water might be destroying the active compound. On October 4th, 1971, using low-temperature ether extraction instead of boiling water, Tu successfully isolates a compound showing 100% effectiveness against malaria in mice and monkeys. But nobody knows if it is safe for humans. In an act of remarkable courage, Tu and two colleagues volunteer as the first test subjects. If the compound was toxic, there would be no second attempt. They took it anyway, and they survived. Clinical trials followed immediately. All 21 malaria patients in the first study recovered completely. They named the compound Jinghaosu. The world now knows it as artemisinin. On October 5th, 2015 in Stockholm, Sweden, Tu Youyou receives the Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine. She is the first mainland Chinese scientist to win a Nobel Prize in a scientific category. She did it without a doctorate, without a medical degree, without training abroad, just ancient texts and persistence. The Nobel Prize confirmed what history already knew, but it also marked the moment the plant stopped being treated as a plant. So why does this plant work so well? The secret lies in a molecular weapon hidden inside the leaves. An ender peroxide bridge, a rare chemical structure that reacts with iron. Here is the mechanism. Malaria parasites survive by feeding on your red blood cells, and in the process, they hoard iron like fuel. When artemisinin enters the parasite, it reacts with that high iron concentration, and a rare chemical bridge snaps, releasing free radicals in a violent chain reaction. The parasite collapses from the inside within hours, faster than anything medicine had ever deployed before. By its own estimates, the World Health Organization admits this discovery changed the trajectory of malaria worldwide. In Africa alone, it quietly saves over 100,000 lives every single year. And yet, the same institution that celebrates its success draws a firm line when it comes to how the plant itself is used. The guidance is unambiguous. The plant should not be grown, prepared, or used outside pharmaceutical control. The reasoning sounds cautious, even responsible. Standardization, dosage control, resistance management. It sounds airtight, until you trace what changed after the molecule was isolated. Once extracted, refined, and centralized, the molecule becomes a market worth tens of millions, then hundreds of millions. Projections estimate it will reach $225 to $677 million by 2030. Corporations like Sanofi invested heavily in synthetic versions produced through genetically engineered yeast. Control shifts upstream away from soil and seasons toward laboratories, patents, and licensing agreements. Compare that to the alternative. A packet of Artemisia annua seeds costs $5 online. The plant thrives in poor soil and requires minimal water. It produces multiple harvests per year. One backyard garden could supply anti-malarial tea for months. If people in malaria-endemic regions simply grew Artemisia in their gardens and made tea from it, they would not need expensive pills from Novartis or Sanofi. The entire supply chain, from genetically modified yeast production to pharmaceutical manufacturing to distribution networks, would become unnecessary. But malaria is just the beginning of wormwood's story. The same chemical logic appears again in a place no one expected, and few were eager to pursue. Since the early 1990s, researchers have discovered that the same mechanism killing malaria parasites also targets cancer cells. Malaria parasites hoard iron. Cancer cells consume iron at extreme rates, sometimes 5 to 15 times more than healthy cells, to sustain uncontrolled growth. This places them in the same dangerous position as the parasite, chemically vulnerable to the same reaction. Multiple studies confirm that Artemisia possesses potent anti-cancer properties. Artemisinin compounds selectively kill cancer cells while leaving normal cells largely unharmed. Research published in Life Sciences journal showed artemisinin reduced breast cancer cell viability by up to 75% in laboratory studies. Studies on lung cancer, colon cancer, and leukemia cells showed similar results. Yet the pharmaceutical industry shows minimal interest. Why? Because once a cure grows from the ground, the system built to sell it begins to lose its grip. Beyond malaria and cancer, Artemisia does something far less talked about. It kills parasites. Not gently, completely. Tapeworms, roundworms, pinworms, organisms that survive chemical drugs, simply shut down. A 2017 study found that Artemisia extract caused paralysis, death, and ultrastructural damage to a common human tapeworm. Research on livestock showed that dietary wormwood supplementation reduced parasitic worm burdens in sheep, infected with blood-sucking stomach worms. If it can purge parasites from a 70-kilogram sheep infected with blood-sucking worms, what do you think it does to the human body? In many parts of the world, antiparasitic drugs like albendazole are either unavailable or priced far beyond reach. That's where Artemisia becomes dangerous, not medically, but economically. It grows readily, requires no pharmaceutical infrastructure, and has been used safely for millennia. Yet when it comes to parasites, the World Health Organization says almost nothing about wormwood. No campaigns, no education, no encouragement. That silence isn't accidental. From 340 AD to 2015, Artemisia annua never disappeared. Empires fell. Medical theories changed. The plant stayed. Chinese emperors used it. Vietnamese soldiers used it. African communities used it. For over 16 centuries, this knowledge survived without awards, funding, or patents. Then in 2015, the world finally acknowledged what had always been known with a Nobel Prize. But instead of celebrating this accessible medicine, authorities discouraged its cultivation. They cannot patent Artemisia because it is public domain. So they patent extraction methods, synthetic derivatives, and combination therapies. They shift the narrative from plant to pill, from garden to pharmacy, from self-sufficiency to dependence. Organizations like Doctors Without Borders have successfully implemented Artemisia-based treatment programs in sub-Saharan Africa, training local farmers to grow and process the plant according to standardized protocols. These initiatives demonstrate that quality control and efficacy can be achieved without pharmaceutical industry involvement. When communities grow their own medicine, they are no longer customers. They become self-sufficient, and that threatens the entire profit model. One packet of seeds costs $5. One pharmaceutical prescription costs hundreds of dollars. In 2015, Tu Youyou said in her Nobel acceptance speech that artemisinin is a true gift from old Chinese medicine. She was acknowledging something modern medicine consistently downplays. They can discourage the tea, they can create regulatory barriers, but they cannot patent a weed. Artemisia annua cannot be genetically modified to require proprietary inputs. It cannot be controlled because the seeds spread freely and grow anywhere. That is precisely why the World Health Organization discourages home cultivation. And that is precisely why it matters now. If this archive opens something for you, subscribe to Lost Archives and hit the bell. Every like and share preserves what they tried to erase. The next archive opens soon.